All right, well, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you may be. Thank you for standing by, and welcome to today's Tivoli User Community Webcast. Our topic for today is the big event, the top 9 ways to use events to run workload automation. All phone lines are currently in a listen-only mode, and later there will be a question and answer session with further instructions being given at that time. You may ask a question at any time during the presentation using the chat window located in the control panel. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation with the rest of the Q&A. Today's session is being recorded, and you'll be provided a copy of today's materials following the call. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Rick Post is the Workload Automation Service Team Lead for the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the newest member on the Board of Directors of ASAP, a user customer-driven nonprofit providing the best training, education, and network for users of IBM workload automation products. Rick has been in IT for 30 years, including such places as Land's End and the last 16 years at the UW. He started working with TWS as a user in 1997 and then moved to the administration side in 2008. He is also the vice president of the newly formed Midwest TWS user group. His current position includes working with both TWSZ and TWSD. Most of the focus was on the mainframe until the UW system decided to implement a new human resource system. Rick, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, this is Rick. How you doing? So I'm going to talk to you today about the big event, and this will be basically about any events that can happen. Most of it is going to be over event rules because that's one of the easiest things you can do, and otherwise there's other events that can actually help you automate parts of your system. So that what we're doing is we're trying to show how to use event-driven workloads into your production environment. It helps out a lot of different ways. I mean, some people say they have a hard time setting this up. It just takes time to do it, and they don't have that time. But once you do it, then you actually realize how much time it really saves you. So then you can actually learn how to incorporate these into your environment. You can just start with a simple one event or, work its way up. We have 500 some event rules that we actually incorporate along with other events, and I know some customers that actually have a lot more than that. So then we also have a poll this morning that we actually have out there for you.
Yeah, we'll run that right now.
So these events basically, event rules are typically stuff that a lot of people have available. It's always been there for you, but some people just don't take the time to learn how to set them up. Once you set them up and start working with them, it's really easy to do it once you start get going on it. You do learn a lot of things along the way, like we have over the years. But the one thing isn't it just event rules, there's also other events that happen that you can actually then go on and really help your event. So then what we would like to do is go ahead and figure out what you have with your poll, and we'll see then where I really focus towards most of this stuff. But it's usually a lot of this is pretty much all about event rules. There's one section that just basically talks about cross-platforming, where you have one platform that actually talks to the other.
Got the majority of people voted. We'll leave it open for a few more seconds here. So if anyone else wants to get their last vote in here, we can do that. All right. Well, Rick, it looks like about 57% of the audience currently does use event rules, and 43 do not.
Okay. Well, it'll be good for those people that don't to see how we use them. And then for the ones that do, you might see something that you haven't thought about. So then basically what we have set up here is the top 9, because we were talking about at ASAP this past year. This is one of the presentations that I gave in April of this year. And we decided, since most people are migrating to 9, version 9, whatever, then we talk about the top 9 event rules that we came up with. And We are still on 8.6. We're going to 9.3. We're skipping 9.1 and 9.2. But that, of course, is a little bit, have a few things that we have to actually work on to get there. But so number 9, file not found. So what this was is that we had a customer that came to us, and they said that they wanted to basically have a way to automate the FICA file transfer process. So we have, at the university here, we have satellite campuses throughout the state, and every one of them has to send the file back into the central system to be worked on and then handled. And they wanted to do automate that somehow, but they wanted to make sure that when a customer didn't have their file available while we ran this, that they got notified. So we came up with the file not found event rule, which is it's not very hard to set up. Basically, here you're actually identifying the job status change. So the job that runs that gets the file from a certain school, here it's the UW-Oshkosh. And what it does is that when the job changes, we actually have an event that we're looking for here. And if the event is abend, which means it did not run correctly and it found no file, it will actually trigger this event rule. And so when it does trigger, then what we'll do is we'll do a send mail. And what that send mail does is that we created within there the body of the language in here, which you can see at the bottom of the screen here, what it says. It says the UW Stout, or this one is Stout, I guess, was not found in your specified campus folder. So now they have to manually upload that file. And we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and this really works well because a lot of times the schools, they'll get that, and then they usually know that they forgot or that for some reason their file never got created and they didn't know it. And it works like quite well for them. So this is one of the pretty easiest ones to set up for as far as what we found. So the next one, number 8 here, is run a command. Now this one we've done for a little while, but and we've rerun different commands. And what we have here is a customer came and said that they run their schedule throughout the night. I mean, we pretty much run schedules 24/7. Because since we switched over from the Z to the D, most of the D side is what we do now. We do still have the Z, but the D side, it's pretty much 24/7 compared to where the Z side was batch runs. We shut everything down at 7 o'clock, and then we start running all of our batch, and then we get done by 4 o'clock. Here, we run all the time, but this one customer said that, well, we run at night, and what happens is if we have a problem during the night, they do not want to be called at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So they said we want an automated way to cancel that stream so that the remaining parts can actually run. And so here we have the status change is to where we'll look at this job, this one job that we notified or identified here. And if it does have the abend, there's 2 things that we do with that. And one is email the group to let them know that it will be automatically canceled. Then we run a command. And the command that we run is this conman command to actually cancel the stream. And the command actually, the format, that's the one thing you have to watch out with running this command. You have to have the correct format, and you have to specify the path of where that conman is in your environment. Because this kind of stuck us at first because we were trying to run it and we had a little problem, but until we actually specified the correct path, then it finally worked. And so this conman is the CS is cancel stream, and we identify the stream, and then we have the no ask, and that's another little gotcha that a lot of people, because if you do the without the no ask, it will prompt and say, do you really want to do this? Well, what you really want to do is you just put the no ask and say, yes, I want it done, because at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to be, even the operators don't really want to deal with it. So it's much easier to just do it automated, because they were happy just saying, just cancel it, we'll take care of it the next day. And so then, of course, we send out this saying that that stream was canceled. That way they know about it the next day. So number 7 here was an interesting one as well. We have streams, that this is a connection that we kind of run between the distributed and the mainframe that we have. So what we do is we run a certain process that we have on the distributed side that creates files. And what we do is then we have to send that file back to the mainframe to process on the mainframe. Because one of the applications that we have on the mainframe is a budget process that needs certain information that gets created on the distributed process. So here they said, well, we want to do a job trigger with the text. And because this is the process that we actually run over the weekend, this one here only runs on Saturday. And, well, it's set up to run either Friday night, Saturday, or Sunday. And so we always wanted to make sure that this process ran before Monday morning, because we did not want to come in Monday morning and then start doing our normal stuff and then have the file not there for it to be processed. So what we did is we set up this job trigger with the text. And so we identified this job here. This is a job that we actually set up on the distributed side that actually is it's a trigger job for us. And what it is that it then triggers to tell us that we're going to actually kick everything over to the mainframe. So what we do is we identify when that job runs successfully, because we want to make sure that the process runs correctly. So if it happens, we don't get this, and that's we could set it up to where we could send out a text or some other identification, to the operators if we have a problem. They get a notification that there is a problem, so they call us anyway. But so that way we don't need a text to go and send it to, out to say that it's admin, because we already have the operators being notified by it. So what here is then once it's successful is that we send it out to a cell phone basically as a text. And so that way, and so this text goes out, and then as long as they see that text on their cell phone by the end of Sunday, late on Sunday, then there's nothing to worry about, and it's worked pretty slick. And so I think only once that we've had it since we started doing this, that late Sunday all of a sudden we didn't see the text, the text, and we also never got notified about the job. Went out and looked, and what actually happened was that the job was in a stuck status, and then we had to clean it up and take care of it. But this seems to work out pretty well. And so what we did is the recipient is, of course, with the cell phone provider tells us how to set up the actual recipient address to how it goes to the cell phone. And then, of course, it gets sent in the email message. It comes across as a text in this way saying that the trigger job finished successfully, that go ahead and complete the trigger for the mainframe. But that's already automated right now. This is a little bit older message. So number 6, we have a set of events and Twitter. So this was a customer that came and said what they have is they have these processes that run throughout the day. And this is where we have, because the university setting, so we have the universities throughout the state. Well, they don't want to, rely on emails. They wanted a way to automatically see when certain processes were done at real time. And so we had to figure out how we could notify them. Well, I came up with it and said, well, why don't we use social media? And I said, Twitter works really well for this. And so what we have is we actually have a web portal to where the Twitter feed actually goes to show the customers when these processes are done. And they get instant, because it's real time. I mean, it happens right away. So they can see instantaneously what these processes are doing at that certain time. And so we have these set of events. So as you see here on the screen, we have the job status for all these different jobs or processes that we want identified. And once they happen, then they send out this send mail to the tweet. And I set up the account, tweet at tweetemail.com, and that's the account that we send everything to. And so it was really like once you identify the job, and then it says running. As long as it's running, then it goes ahead and does the email. And here's what it looks like on the actual web page that we actually sign into. Now this is a web page that is, of course, only open to university staff. But once they go to this page, you can see here we got the different feeds from Twitter for each different process that they identify which one they want to know about. And like here, time and minute says the last finished at 2:14 p.m. And EPM is 4:01 a.m. So it basically, that way they have the instantaneous feedback of when certain things are. The reason why they want it, I guess, there's certain things that they want to make sure gets processed before, they actually can go ahead and tell people that, it's actually done and taken care of. So number 5 here, the late event rule. Now what we have here is another customer that actually said they have a process that they want to do, and they want to be notified of when a certain process is running late. They need to know, because what happens is if this process runs late, they have to start another process to make sure that that finishes out before the normal start of the next day, because this other process is dependent on this process finishing. So there is a way that they have to notify that, to kick off. So what we do is we have an event rule that's set up for this late, and so we identify the job name that we're looking at, and as soon as that job name is identified, then we go ahead and send out the email to the group involved and the person involved, and you just have the recipients in there, and of course the subject, and then the body. And I think I showed the body. Yeah, here's what it is. So it's basically late warning saying that the grant job, whatever, and then here's where we put in the different variables. We can pull the job name out and then actually insert it into the body. Has missed its latest start time of 10:30 p.m. And the grant's release instructions are this. So then this is a knowledge-based article that we have in-house that the operators can refer to, or the functional staff can refer to, and then they can actually go out and do this process after that time. So then we also identify here that, if this certain process does not run, then go ahead and contact these people here. And so within the job stream, the way we set this up, which I'm sure a lot of you set this up, but not everybody, we have the latest start time here identified as 10:30 p.m. And then, of course, the action is still continued, but that's where we get the notification. That's the event that we're looking for, to notify them of this different process, this change that they have to take care of. And so here's an example of what the email looks like when it comes out. Because here it sticks in the job name, as you can see, and then it missed the start, and it gives you an actual link to that knowledge base article. And then, of course, it gives you the different email addresses. Okay, number 4, we have return code. So this was a situation where what happened is that we have U.S. Bank is our bank where we deposit our funds, and we have to run a process to go ahead and pick up a file from them. And what happens is that, it's a bank, and so they said, well, we can't give you an identifier of when this stuff shows up. You just have to go on and see if the file's there and try to. Well, that caused us problems, because there was a lot of times a job would abandon and hold things up, and we'd have to have somebody go out and clear it off and figure out if it wasn't actually just because it was there was no file there. Well, we did some research, and we found that every time we had an abend, it was a no file found, return code 19. And so what we decided is that when we see this return code 19, we're going to automatically take care of this and get rid of it so that we don't have to worry about it anymore, because it's something that we ran every day, and when the file wasn't there, this always caused problems for us. And it really wasn't a huge problem, but it was just a nice way to clean everything up. So then what we would do is we identify the job name, and then we put in this return code property, saying that if it does equal 19, then the event rule is triggered. And so then the two things we did, of course, was send an email to say that it failed because due to the return code 19, and then run a command. And here's that command again with the same kind of structure, where what we do is we cancel that stream so that it would wipe it off of the schedule. In the command line, of course, it talks about how it's, the different path name with the cancel stream, like I talked about before. So then, of course, it identified with the send mail, which the return code 19, and then it finished and told us, so that way we'd go out and make sure that, everything was fine. Number 3, a file trigger. Now this is probably, there's a lot of things like this where we have file triggers for different reasons. And that's the one thing too, that there's many different ways to do these. A lot of times what we'll have is, when a customer comes to us and they ask us to solve a certain issue, they might have, it might not even be a problem. It might be say, well, we want to do something with this, we're thinking about this. And a lot of times you'll brainstorm and say, well, we can do it this way or this way or this way. And what you usually do is you end up looking at each one to see what's the best way to do it for your environment, because every environment's differently and everybody does things differently. So what we did is we had this file trigger where what we had is we had these files show up, and they needed to be transferred to our electronic report distribution service so that they can then be printed and sent back to the printer, or somehow sent to, so that they can actually have, and what they use are the transcripts, the official transcripts for the students. And because before what it was is usually a manual transfer, or a lot of times they would tell us, well, we've got a bunch out there, can you, we do certain things like that. So we identified this process of how we wanted to do it. I mean, like I said, there's many different ways to do it, but this was what worked for us the best. And so what we did is we came up with this event rule that when the file is actually created and we identify the file, at the location, we actually have the full path location and the file name. When that shows up there, because it then matches what the file name is, and we have the interval when to look for this, it does the trigger. So it does two things. Of course, sends an email to tell us that there's files that were found, and then it submits a job stream, which then processes these files. And what it does is it goes to pick up the file and brings it over to the electronic report distribution service. And of course, sends the email telling you that what's out there. So then when it completes successfully, then it also does another event rule to tell us that the actual transfer was successful. So then that's what we're looking for, is a successful transfer. And that's just how we set it up with the send mail and who we send to. So then number 2 here, this is not an event rule at all. This is where I talk about, this is actually just an event that happens anywhere. And this is a cross-platform triggering. So this is similar to the other one I was mentioning, where we have shadow jobs actually that run on the distributed side to actually watch the mainframe. So what we have here, this is where we have the process that runs the distributed side. And when it runs, it is looking for a job process on the mainframe to be completed. So then what we have is that we're identifying here is this is the graph view of the job stream. And of course we have resource dependencies here, and then we also have the shadow job up above. The top one here is the shadow job information. And so of course we're looking for that shadow job, the results of what we're looking for. So this is the remote job that we have. This is the information on the mainframe side, and the shadow job details is it tells us, what application it's in, which part of the operation. This is their different operations, and then the job stream and the job name. And so when that job actually completes, then that's the dependency resolution that's done. So if you go back here, that's the dependency resolution that actually triggers off this part of the distributed side, because then it says, okay, my dependency is met, so I'm going to start running. So that was, without using the event rules, that's just sort of the event that we just figured into the way to run our automation. Then our number one here, this was an interesting event that we had to really figure out. So we had a customer that came in and said, okay, so what we have is we have a job stream that has a recurring job that runs every 15 minutes. However, we do not want that job to run when job stream 2 or job stream 3 is running. So we had to figure out a way of how do you tell that reoccurring job not to run when one of these two is running. And the thing is, job stream 2 is going to run all on its own. It's all independent of itself. And so is job stream 3. But however, job stream 2 could be running, start and run, and then in the middle, job stream 3 could start and run. So there was a lot. This took a little while for us to really figure out this logic here. This is what I drew up, is I put it out there and I drew the logic to everything of how this would all work first before I actually laid it out. So this was really interesting how we tried a couple different things. I think we worked on this, we tested different things for about a month, and before we finally came up with this part and figured out how we do it. So what we came up with is that we're going to use resources to trigger this whole thing to make sure that everything runs in the correct order. And since we've implemented this, it has run perfectly ever since. We have not had a problem with it. So what we did is we took the job stream 1 and set it up as normal with the reoccurring job with inside that says it's going to run every 15 minutes. However, that job within that job stream has 2 resources attached to it. And there could be more, depending on how many job streams you want to identify. But this is the way it is set up now, because they said they're going to add more job streams later. But so we set up with the first 2 was the first 2 they had here. So we have 2 resources, and each resource is tied to each job stream. So then what we had is that when these resources are available, this job can actually run, this reoccurring job can run. When they're not available, it can't run. So then job stream 2 here, what happens is that it cannot start because we do not want job stream 2 to actually start until the recurring job is finished. Because if it's running, we don't want job stream 2, and the same for job stream 3. But we don't want it to start. So one of the dependency is the recurring job running? And if it's not running, then you can start job stream 2. And when we do that, then we have an event rule that will actually signal back to the resource 1 here, to turn to 0, which means it's not available. So then that resource goes to 0, so that stops the reoccurring job from happening. And then it runs through, the job stream 2 runs through, finishes, changes resource 1 back to 1 so that it's available. And the same is for job stream 3. So resource 1 and 2 could be available, so once these 2 are both available, then the reoccurring job can happen. And sometimes we've had it to where that reoccurring job doesn't run for a few hours because those resources are not available. So I'll show you how that works when we put it in here. So what we did with the job stream properties is this is the job stream, the primary flag job that we identified that assigns the first flag for the custom logic that we worked out. This is all the different dependencies of these different job streams are in here. And then, of course, the jobs have all the different resource dependencies in them. And then the actual job stream, this is in job stream 2, is actually one of the job streams that we identified. And that's the job stream that we actually look for the change within there. That's the, because I think, yeah, this is the one that actually is the reoccurring. And then once we identify, so the status change in there, we actually run the command. Because this is, yeah, this is job stream 2 here. So when that one starts, so that started, so then we actually run a command to actually change the resource to 0. And that's just like the conman command that we had before. The path, the conman, and then we change resource, and we identify the resource, change it to 0, no ask. So there, so if we go back to that logic, that's where the event rule 1 changes resource to 0. That's because job stream 2 has started, so therefore the resource goes to 0. So then the next one is when the job stream, so we're looking for the status of the job stream again. When it says successful, then we'll run another command and it changes it back to 1. So that's how we use the event rules to change it back. And of course, that's how it works for job stream 3, and then if you have job stream 4, job stream 5. So now what we have is, of course, questions we have, and we do have a few questions that we already came in. So I will go ahead and address those. I had them up here. Oh, here we are. Okay, so we have one that came in that says, why is it that I can set up a rule to check for file modification but not an opens dependency? Well, my first guess, which, because the thing is every environment is different, is that you should be able to. But there's probably something that's not quite set up either on your environment correctly or it's not communicating correctly. This is where you probably would have to open a PMR ticket with IBM, and they would have to, of course, then take a look at your environment and see exactly what, because then they can help you with that, because I would think that you should be able to do it. It should not, you should be able to do it with an opens dependency. Of course, it depends on how you're using it, because that's the one thing that we kind of run into. Sometimes things, you work through the logic and it's like this should work, but then once you actually get into it, you're kind of like, okay, now I understand why. So we have that same problem to where, everything, we set it up and then it doesn't work, and then we really work our way through, and sometimes it takes a little while for us to really figure out what's going on behind the scenes to make it work. It's not always cut and dried. Then another question said, how difficult is the learning curve from TWSZ to TWSD? TWSZ is where I started back, well, I don't want to tell you, that would be dating me. But anyway, that's pretty much what I started on, and that's all I knew. And the distributed side, I wasn't really interested in when it came out, because I was actually at Land's End then, and we tried it and didn't really like it. So when I came to university, though, we actually had to move to it, and once I got involved with it, I see how different it is. And it's a different environment, but the thing is that's really nice is that they're trying to, IBM is actually really making this work so that the Z and the D side have the same functionality. It's not 100% there, but in the new 9.3, we just got some new features actually to make it very similar. I mean, there's some features now that the D side has that the Z side has always had. So they're working, and then the Z side, of course, is actually getting some things that the distributed side can do that the Z can't. So there are some differences back and forth. It's a little bit more involved. It took me, because when I switched over to the D side, I actually I went to ASAP U right off the bat. I mean, the very next year I went to ASAP and I learned a ton to really start putting things together. But it was actually probably a good 2 years worth of working in it to really know it. And then you don't even really know it 100%. You just know enough to make you dangerous. And but now that I've been working on it for quite a while, there's a lot of things that really come along, and there's a lot of new things too that's really interesting that I haven't even been able to work on that really look fun and interesting. So the other thing is I really enjoy working on both sides. I mean, I fall back to the Z at times, but I'm not as involved anymore, and it pretty much runs itself now. So the D side really seems to have a lot of interesting features that I'm looking forward to exploring. So now I guess if there are any more questions, if anybody wants some more clarifications on things they saw.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions from the audience here, Rick. Excuse me. We have a customer that would like to get an email whenever anyone raises the fence on a workstation. Are you aware of a way to set this up through an event rule?
So what was the question? I didn't quite get that.
A customer that would like to get an email whenever someone raises the fence on a workstation.
Oh, yes, there is an event rule that you can actually watch that. It's a setup within there. You can actually do custom events too if it isn't quite exactly what you want. But if I remember looking at the different event rules that's available, how they're looked up, there is let me go out there and look. Let's see here. Okay. Where is? There it is. I suppose I should do it so the audience can see it.
That could be helpful.
Yeah. Well, let me. Actually, do I have it on here? Oh, it's not going to let me open the portal. Well, I can do it through the WebAdmin, which is not an IBM product. Oh, I'm having all kinds of problems here. Still won't let me open it. Okay. Fortunately, I won't be able to show you there, but I do have a different one here that has it open. There is under the events, it actually gives you, there's called first custom event, and then typically workload scheduler plan events, typically workload schedule application monitor, and file monitor. And if you go under the workload scheduler plan events, there's different statuses there. And what you can do is there's one called work status change. And that work status change will come up in the box, and then the properties down below, you can actually select, let's see. Okay, that's not the one I was looking for. Okay, that's Okay, because we have something similar to that, and I'm trying to think of what. Um, it might be a custom event that we set up, but anyway, that doesn't really give you a pick menu to when they change the limit. Because actually, we kind of have a little bit different setup for that. What you can do is if you go up to there it is. If you do a custom event, you can actually, if you go out to IBM Documents, which really is, sometimes kind of hard to read, but what it is that there's a way out there that you can actually set up this custom event to actually look for a limit change, and it's kind of, it takes a little bit of trial and error to do it, but what's probably the easiest thing for you to do is just, we've done this, is where we just open up a PMR with IBM and say we want to be able to have this event, and then level 2 can actually send you the information of how to set it up. So that'd probably be the easiest way to do it.
Okay, great. Excuse me. Can any of these rules be set up in TWSZ?
They do have it in TWSZ. However, I hear that I haven't worked with it, but the new WAPL is really very powerful for doing a lot of this. If you have the DWC, which is the Dynamic Workload Console, and all the event rules are available right there, even for the Z. I'm not sure if they work exactly the same way, because we don't do event rules on our mainframe, but the Dynamic Workload Console is there, and it does have the event rules available to you. So you would probably have to play with it. But the one thing that I've been told, Dean Harrison is one of the IBMers that I talk to all the time, and he says just get WAPL, and which is the workload automation planning language, or programming language for the mainframe side, and everybody says that's just the wave of the future. So that's two things you can check into, but I'm pretty sure that the event rules are there as long as you have the DWC available.
Okay. Another question, we've been using event rules for a while, and there doesn't seem to be a good way of finding out what the problem was if an event is missed or not triggered. Which log would be good to look at on the master or the FTA?
Yeah, that's that's a tricky one because we have the same type of thing. If you see here, because the one thing that we have is TW WebAdmin, which is a product from Segas that we get, which is a German company that creates this, and we have the event rule monitors, which of course shows you the different successful, and I don't know if we have one in here, but we have it where they're not successful, and there is one. It actually tells you that it didn't work. There it is. Tells you that this actually failed, and what you can do is you can actually display it out here to see what the trigger is. And actually you're trying to figure out what exactly the problem is. It doesn't really tell you much about why it failed, but it does tell you that it did fail. And what you can do then is, if you go out to your standard list or standard log files, you can actually go look, and we have an audit log here that we could check. But this is the thing I like about it, because if we go into the maintenance, we can get the log file up right here, and this brings up the standard logs right here. So that we can actually go look for that event rule, not the event rule itself, because it won't show up in there, but you have to look at that time frame. So when we see that monitor of when it failed, then we go to that time frame and we look at the log through there, and actually it does kind of clue us in as to what's possibly going on. So it's kind of it's a search and find method type thing, because there's really no real good way that we found that actually tells you why it didn't work. A lot of times we've done some different, testings as far as that goes, and it's like, every event is usually different. I mean, some things, like there could be a network problem behind the scenes that, all of a sudden we figure, okay, or it could be that we had a communication problem with one of the FTAs to where then that's why it didn't work. But that's one of the things that we've had a problem too, is that communication is sometimes kind of an issue, because what happens is if you have a network event that actually breaks communication between the FTA and the master, you then sometimes lose that corresponding communication back and forth for the event rules. And so like when we run JNext plan at 6 a.m. And so then all of a sudden at 6 a.m. we get all these notifications saying that this certain thing happened. Well, that's because that communication was broken behind the scenes, and that communication didn't get reestablished correctly. And so we're trying to figure out, we've kind of staved that off a bit by being understanding when those certain things happen. We identify them so that once we come in the morning, we see a message saying that communication got broken, and then we'll know that, okay, we're going to have these problems with these event rules and things, that's why. So we kind of be proactive as far as notifying ourselves that there's a problem that occurred overnight.
Great. Excuse me. Can you quickly explain correlate on in the event rule definitions?
Oh, correlate on. Okay. Yeah, when you have, let's see here, let me go. That's one of the functions. You can have sequence of events, set of events, single event, and then you can correlate on certain things. So if you have a event rule that shows up, and then you could say correlate, what it does is you're basically specifying exactly what piece you're looking at. Because let me just a second here. Because I have a little cheat sheet here I can look at for about this stuff, and I'm trying to get to it right away. And so basically, what correlate, we tried using it, and we've used it, successful a little bit, but we really didn't use it as much. But what it does is it helps you really to pinpoint exactly what event you're trying to look at. And I'm trying to look at my cheat sheet here. Okay. Basically, it's like the common property. So this is where I think we might have done it with the workstation, where you can actually correlate it on the workstation event, so that if they do change the limit, which is where it could help that one question, that then you can trigger that event. That's where the correlate actually helps, because you could say, okay, the event is a workstation change, but then you correlate on a certain event within that workstation. And that's where you kind of need the exact property name and things like that. And that's where it's, you have to read the documents from IBM, which, isn't always the easiest.
Okay, we have, excuse me, we have a TWS based on mainframe side, and the DWC is the add-on. Can we do this with the DWC since it's not D series? They have a TWS mainframe. Oh, that's just a repeat of the question, I guess. So the question is, they have a TWS based on the mainframe side, and the DWC is add-on. Can they do it with the DWC since it's not D series?
I would think so. We haven't tried it, but yeah, I would think you should be able to, because actually what we're doing is we're actually going to bring up our DWC when we have, because we have two separate environments. When we built our environments, we were told to build two different masters, because a lot of people are like, well, why don't you use Z-centric? It's like, well, because we were told that their mainframe is going away, in 2 years, which was back in 1993, and it's still here. But they said, don't build them together, build two masters. So we have a TWSZ master, and we have a TWSD master. So that's why we need the shadow jobs. That's why we all need that. But now what we're doing is that we're getting a DWC built so that we can actually look at the D side and the Z side on the same DWC, so that you should be able to run the event rules and jobs and everything else together so that we won't even need the shadow jobs anymore. At least this is what, in theory, we've been told. So, because we had a plug-in that we put on the mainframe to then go ahead and talk to that GUI so that everything works right. And so hopefully we're bringing that up now, so hopefully it all works. But I think you should be able to, as long as you have it there and you're actually talking to the Z-side mainframe, you should be able to do the same functionality.
Excellent. When doing a file trigger, and you start from a job stream, how do you protect from a second file trigger starting the stream before it's finished with another file? Or can you run them concurrently?
That is what you, basically, the way we do that with one of ours is that we have a resource tied to that job stream that actually is a one resource, so that when that one is okay, so we got a file trigger that comes in and it triggers to run the job stream. It takes that resource and it says, okay, I'm being in use. Well, then another file comes in and it triggers. It can't run because that resource is being used until that job stream is done, sending the other files over. And then the resource comes available, then the next trigger happens. Because, yeah, that's the problem we had, is where we had that same issue where a lot of times it would re-trigger, several times, and we'd miss, and it'd come up the system. But then once you put that limit in there of one, it would run, and then it'd just run concurrently. It would pick up, like what would happen, it might pick up, there might be 4 files there by the time it runs, and it takes those 4 files, but then another file comes in right then. That extra file will sit there until those 4 are gone, and then it'll start again.
Great. There is an option to set up an event rule to monitor workstation status, but I do not see anything for offense.
Yeah, that's the same thing, is that, the status, it doesn't give you everything, and this is where the correlation can work, but there's also the custom event. They do not have the status. However, I've been told that the 9.3, they did include a few extra things, but I'm not sure if it's on the workstation. I know there's some extra things on the job stream. I haven't looked through the DWC, the 9.3 one, yet to really check that out. But yeah, that one, it's not there yet. So that's where you'd have to come up with a custom one, or figure out how to correlate it together. Because we're actually, we just ran into that to where somebody wanted that too, and we're working on that right now. We're hoping to do that when we get to our 9.3.
Okay. Back when I think you were running through some of your demo stuff here, Rick, you're using an event rule-driven command to enable and disable the resource. Could alternately, if you put a resource dependency on the entire stream, like the as a alternate method there.
Right. Yeah. Here, let me bring that up again. I'll go back to yeah. This is so basically the resource isn't on the stream. The resource is on the job that reoccurs. Because we want the stream to run. So we want the stream to start off in the morning and run the job and then reoccur the job every 15 minutes. So the stream, we don't want to touch the stream. We just wanted the job to be held while these other streams are running. So yeah, the resource goes right back onto the job within that stream. And so that job stream 2 here, when it runs and starts, it actually sends the event rule to change that resource to 0. And then it changes it back to 1 when that job is done, when that stream is done. Because we thought the same thing. Well, why don't we just do it on the stream, do one resource on the stream? Well, that didn't work the way we wanted it to, and that's when we came up with putting the resource on the job. So the job has different resources, one resource per job stream.
Okay, great. We had someone that was curious about the TWS web admin screen. They have 8.6 and 9.1 Linux and haven't seen that one before.
Oh, okay. This type of screen right here, apparently, what this is that, yeah, we have AIX that we run, but it should be Linux, and it shouldn't really matter what OS you have. You should be able, as long as you can talk to the database, because this all comes from the database. And I'm sure that, you know, Brian from Segas would be happy to set them up, unless, of course, you're in Europe or something, then, of course, you'd have to talk to Horizont, which is in Germany. But this should work for pretty much any OS. And this is the type of screen that we have. We have down here the version, the 3.1 FixPack 06. So this is what we have available, and yeah, we have to apply our license pretty soon.
Great. Hold on, I think we got one coming in here. So there was someone wanted kind of a slight clarification on the streams question from earlier. They meant to ask about the resource on the second 2 streams, and they agree that the first stream needs the resource on each job.
Okay, I think I know, yeah. So if we go back to this. So the event, so this is where we had the issue where stream 3 can run independently, separately from stream 2. And it could run later than stream 2, or it could run at the same time, or it could run before even. So what we did is that's why we had the 2 different resources. So the reoccurring job, job 1 here in the yellow, will not run if resource 1 and resource 2, either one of those have a 0. They both have to have 1 for this reoccurring job to actually kick off. And so what stream 3 does is that the resource 2 is tied to stream 3. And so stream 3, when it starts, it changes that resource 2 to 0. And so stream 2 may not have run or may have already ran through, so resource 1 is at 1. But resource 2 is at 0, so therefore the reoccurring job will not kick off. I think that answers the question.
Okay, fantastic. We'll hold on a sec here and see if any other ones kind of pop through. Well, that looks like that's most of them there, Rick, and we've just about hit the top of the hour anyway, so thank you very much for your presentation and answering all these questions. I think we had a really good session here with all the Q&A.
That's good. Thanks. Appreciate it, and I hope some people learned a few things today. I know I did.
I definitely did too. Well, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. As you do exit the webcast, please take a few moments to fill out our post-event survey and help us improve our future events. We truly appreciate the feedback. But this concludes today's conference, so have a fantastic day.